Hey, music fans, I'm Billy with an IE.
And I'm Lara without the U.
Welcome to the Pirate Core Music Podcast. This is a podcast about the post-punk band Joy Division. We will be providing the links within our show notes as well as in our Facebook page and Instagram for you to follow. The reason we post links is due to copyright laws, and we adhere to that here on the Pirate Core Music Podcast. This will just be a general discussion of Joy Division. To start, Joy Division was an influential English post-punk band formed in Salford in 1976. The band consisted of Ian Curtis, who did vocals, guitar, and lyrics, Bernard Sumner, who did guitar and keyboards, Peter Hook, who did bass, and Stephen Morris, who did drums. The band was inspired by a Sex Pistols concert in 1976. Sumner and Hook formed the band initially named Warsaw. Their debut EP, An Ideal for Living, 1978, drew attention from Factory Records, and their debut album, Unknown Pleasures, 1979, produced by Mark Hannett, showcased their dark, sparse style and became a landmark in post-punk. Joy Division's music is characterized by its haunting melodies and introspective lyrics, which continue to influence artists across genres even today. So, to start, Laura and I are both, even though she probably wouldn't call herself this, I would say we are both still goths because
Mhm.
of our
Oh,
general
I'm always a
interest.
goth at heart, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. So, but the thing is, Laura has a bit more experience in it, and I do, and we have different experiences within the community itself. So, why don't you go ahead and tell me how you got Joy Division into your life and everything that surrounded that, and then I'll go.
Right, right. So I guess Billy called me an OG goth. I'm probably like early, early era goth, maybe first wave goth.
Mhm.
Um, I'm probably a decade or two older than you. And so I got into the goth scene in the mid 1980s. At the time, I was kind of a real child of the 80s. I listened to a lot of new wave music and whatever was on the radio. And I was working at Kmart. My first boyfriend, I started dating him, and then I didn't realize because at Kmart at the time, everybody, dressed for work. We started going out, and I realized he was kind of a skater kid. He listened to a lot of punk bands like the Revolting Cocks and the Dead Kennedys. But I kind of told him my music tastes, and for my 16th birthday, he presented me with a cassette tape. If y'all know what those are nowadays, but it was Sisters of Mercy Floodland. And at first I was listening to it. I'm like, what is this gothic devil music? But I just kept listening to it and listening to it. And I like fell in love with it. And I didn't realize that I was just a little dark at heart baby all my life. I'd always been a fan of Edgar Allan Poe and dark, scary ghost stories. I mean, beside where other kids would ask their parents for fairy tales at night, I'd ask for a ghost story. And my dad was always obliging with recounting Edgar Allan Poe short stories to me and things like that. My favorite TV show as a kid was The Addams Family. So, I kind of really fell into it. And from there, I was just going around the scene. I live in Denver, and we had a pretty small underground scene, but it was great because everyone you knew would be there. If anytime they had kind of a goth dance night or a local band was playing at a abandoned warehouse, everyone was there. So you got into the scene really tight with a lot of people. My friends were in a band too, so a lot of times we'd get to see them play, and we'd get to see all the other people who was familiar with them at those shows. So I think the first time I listened to Joy Division was at one of the clubs. They had these 16 and over clubs, and you could go there as long as you were 16 and over. They didn't serve alcohol, but they played some real great music, especially on goth nights, or the nights that a lot of the subculture kids would show up. And I can't remember what the first Joy Division song I heard was. I just kind of got this whole influx of music from going to all these events, and so I started picking up records from bands like The Cure and Joy Division, Jesus and Mary Chain. We had a great local vinyl shop that's still in operation to this day called Wax Tracks. And I think the owners of that music record shop actually went to Chicago and opened up Wax Tracks Records, which has signed bands like Ministry and Skinny Puppy.
Oh
But
wow.
it's still around today. You can go there. I've got one of their bumper stickers on my car, and that's where I found my first Joy Division album, which was Closer. And I think mostly the album cover is what influenced me to buy it. I'm not sure which sculpture is on the front. Maybe you do, Billy, but it's a famous I think it's from a tomb actually,
Yeah,
but
I don't think I'm familiar with it. Hold on.
a tombstone of
Um,
some either way, that was the first one I bought and listened to it and just fell in love with Joy Division.
I'm gonna Google it super quick. Let's see. So the cover of Joy Division's album Closer features a photograph of a sculpture by Demetrio Pernio. This sculpture was created in 1910 as part of the Appian family tomb in Genoa's monumental cemetery of Stagliano. Obviously, I don't speak Italian. So that's what it is, which is very,
Yep.
within the vein of God.
And there's I have to sometimes take Joy Division in spurts because they can be very dark and bleak, and sometimes I'm just like I can't take anymore. But their sound is always magnificent. It's just sometimes their lyrics will bring me down, and I'm just like I have to get out of this dark place right now and go listen to some Erasure or something like that.
Yeah, I gotta switch. You gotta switch to the synth pop after that, so you can get.
Yes.
I love that.
How
um,
about you?
my experience is a bit less kinetic. So I kind of classify things depending on generation based off of if it's kinetic, meaning done analogically or physically, or if it's done digitally or via the internet. So my experience is a bit less kinetic, obviously, as millennials are more prone to having nostalgia based on what the internet was like in the early 2000s and late 90s. So I actually got hooked on Joy Division around the age of 16 or 17. My dad was dating this woman at the time who used to be into the goth scene of the 90s. And she had this iPad or iPod with like the most storage I had ever seen on an iPod. And she just had thousands and thousands of albums of music. And it was like, they just went across genres. So one night we were playing Rock Band, and I decided to play Fascination Street by The Cure. And I had never heard that song before, but I was so entranced by it. I was like, what song is this? And she's like, oh, it's Fascination Street by The Cure. I was like, oh, do you have that on your iPod? So I started listening to The Cure, which that remains my number one favorite band of all time to this
Mine
day.
too, of course.
Absolutely. And then I just kind of started to take a nice little tour through post-punk music. And the first song I heard was Love Will Tear Us Apart because it's their most famous and commercially successful song. And then I just kind of slowly consumed album after album after album. And I was hooked on post-punk music after that. It was just sort of like I spent a summer in the doom and gloom, and then it was like after that and then prior to that, like Laura, I liked vampires and werewolves and witches. I read my first Anne Rice novel at 14, so I was already kind of in the macabre romantic headspace one needs to be to
Hmm.
appreciate this kind of music. So Halloween was always my favorite holiday, and I always believed in like the powers of witchcraft and stuff like that. So I was a macabre person prior to that, but it was just sort of like stumbling
You
upon.
were the target audience, huh?
Yeah, and it was just kind of like post-punk music just sort of was like the perfect soundtrack to go with that feeling, you know?
Hmm.
And like before then I had sort of like a kind of disdain for goth people because everyone did for some reason. But it wasn't until I it wasn't until I started listening to the music and really loving it and seeing how they dressed and seeing how the other people looked when that liked the music as well. I was like, maybe it is kind of cool. Maybe it is kind of like they all look like vampires. I want to be a vampire. And so it was just sort of like a slow progression into it. And then now it's like that's my aesthetic.
So funny. I kind of wonder if um, goth became a little bit of a joke in the 90s or just kind of a cliche because
Yeah.
that's when Hot Topic began to emerge and
Yeah.
you'd be like, "Oh, that creepy store in the mall and
Yeah. Or
all the
yeah.
crazy kids hanging out there and everything where and then I think that's why maybe when Goth Talk came on to Saturday Night Live and it was a bit of a joke and everything where when I was into the scene it was more I had quite I would call myself a mid-grade goth. Like I
Mm,
wore the combat boots and the dark clothes and everything, but I had girls at my school who put on the full-on white pasty makeup and
mm,
black lips and did the Susie Sue eye makeup and everything. And I'm like, I never quite went that far, but everyone like just thought it was kind of cool and artsy. Like those are the art school kids or something
mm,
like that. And you basically had to go to like some crazy boutique store. We had one or two in our town that actually sold clothes that were imported from England, usually
mm.
that. And they imported Doc Martens and Manic Panic hair dye and everything. But there was a place, basically only one place in town that sold something like that. Everything else you had to pick up either at Army Surplus or Goodwill, or you had to concoct your own hair dye out of, Kool-Aid or something like that. And maybe it wasn't as, I don't know, cliche, maybe, as it became in the 90s and 2000s.
Well,
I think in the 2000s it became more emo.
yeah, I was gonna say I grew up when emo was the thing, and
Mhm.
I did kind of tour that subculture just a tiny bit in middle school, but I always kind of was like, this isn't it. So in high school, I started to sort of like try to fit in a bit more, so I wore the more preppy clothing. And to be quite honest, I didn't actually lean into the aesthetic until my early 20s. It wasn't until so this is my favorite memory of all time.
Mhm.
So I had just moved to California, and that was when Danny and I were still we just got together. He and I had just started our relationship, so we were
Mhm.
just starting to live together. And I remember seeing that The Cure was going to be playing in Mountain View around my birthday, and I was like, "Oh hell yeah! I want to see them perform. I want to go." And then stumbled up. I started to think, if I'm gonna go to see a band like The Cure, I definitely want to look the part. So I started to watch these videos by this YouTuber who I don't know how popular she is now, but she goes by Black Friday, and she's like this gorgeous New Zealand woman who wears like the most beautiful like makeup ever and always has like the most interesting outfits. So I started to get like makeup tutorial tips from her because I had never worn makeup prior to that, and I wanted to like get some styling tips, and I wasn't sure how it because I think everyone who is participates in the subculture kind of whittles the style down to be more individualistic to them. And at the time, I didn't know how I wanted to really appear. So I tried to do a bit more generic or trad goth at
Mhm.
the time, which um, I don't think I could have pulled off at this point. But I tried it, and my best friend was going to come with me, and she was like in a Jeffree Star, and she has the most amazing makeup skills. So she was going to come with me. She was going to do my makeup, and so I got like this cute little outfit. I got Doc Martens. I She came and did my makeup before the show, like Robert Smith makeup before the show, and then we went, and I had the best freaking time in my whole life. And it was sort of like in that moment, I was like, yeah, this is my identity. This is me. This is absolutely me. And then it was just like it just progressed from there, and then it became my whole aesthetic after that. So I unfortunately got to it late, but that's because um, emo was more popular, and I didn't really vibe with those people. The music was okay, but it wasn't like it didn't hit the same way as because I was like music from the '80s more anyway, so it
Mhm.
didn't hit the same way. And then because I'm a millennial, most of my interaction with the subculture was via online. So you had like Tumblr, and there was DeviantArt and some other spaces where people would just talk and chat and that kind of thing. But when I moved to California, I was able to do it a bit more kinetically. So it started with the Cure concert, and then I found out there was a bar in my and because I lived in Fresno, so I found out there was a bar in my town called Strummers, and it was like an alt. dive bar. And it would have like random themed nights and stuff, but sometimes they would do like Depeche Mode versus The Cure or Morrissey versus The Cure. And I would go and it would be like a blast because I ended up finding out that it was part dance party, part fashion show. So everyone would put on like a really pretty outfit. You'd go in, you'd sort of present yourself a little bit, and everyone would compliment you as sort of like a thing that they would do. They would compliment you. And like you, Fresno is a bigger town, but everyone of that community kind of knew each other. So I knew some of the people. So whenever I'd go, they would recognize me and I'd have conversations with them. And then I would get, I'd drink an ADMF and I would dance until I couldn't stand anymore. And there was this one girl who I never caught her name, but it was like this unacknowledged agreement that if we saw each other at this event, we would always dance together, no matter what. No conversation, nothing. If we saw each other, we were going to dance together. And so we did. And it was just so much fun. But since moving to Texas, I don't unfortunately have the same opportunities. So whenever like a band goes through town, I have to go. Like next Thursday, I'm gonna see Twin Tribes perform, and they are a dark wave. Yeah,
I've just discovered them and I love them.
they're amazing. It'll be my second time seeing them, and Clan of Zymox is gonna open for them. I'm so freaking excited. Oh my gosh.
Dang, Billy, I'm jealous.
And
Now I
I
want
bought
to go
this.
hang out with you and go to the show with you.
Well, if you were in the area, I'd be like, let's go, Chica. Like, let's go. I've got like this whole outfit planned out and everything. I'm so excited. I'll have to show you the shirt, but oh my
Okay,
gosh.
send
Yeah.
me pics.
And then Lebanon Hanover is going to be here in October, and I'm going to see them as well. So I'm really excited. But
I
they have
haven't
this
heard of
place.
them.
I'll send you some music. But there's a place in Dallas called, I think, the Church. But they had a venue that they'll no longer can use, and I don't actually know where they're located anymore. I follow them on Facebook, but I can never seem to track down because they post pictures of people like having a good old time, and I'm like, where are y'all? I want to come. Where are you at? So, anyways, that is my introduction to Joy Division and the goth subculture, and so yeah, as you can tell, it's definitely vastly different by generation. But I think it's cool that it still exists and people today still question what is the definition of goth anyway. Some people say
Mhm.
aesthetic, some people say music. I'm in the music crowd, but it's just interesting how it still persists and how it's transformed and it's undead, it's ever living. So
I
uh,
think there's always been a fascination with like beauty and morbidity. So
mhm.
I think it's going to last a long time.
I do too.
But
I do too, and I think it also because like Joy Division, the people, I'm sorry, the band members of Joy Division all came from a blue collar, working class type surrounding. In fact, excuse me, they call it post punk because it. Uh, sorry, excuse me, I'm all burpy. It disembarks from what punk music was at the time. So you're thinking '70s, early '80s. So Sex Pistols was their inspiration. Sex Pistols and punk music as it is or was all about the working class people and the
Mhm.
disparities between the poor and the rich. But the reason why post punk is considered post punk is because it takes similar sound, but the lyrics are more morbid. They're more morose and more
Mhm.
macabre, and that's where the um, change occurs. And that's what Ian Curtis
Mhm.
brought to the punk music at the time. Which one thing I love so much, I mean, it's sad what happened to him, but one thing I love so much about the band is that when you listen to them, they still sound like an underground band.
Yeah. Yeah. They still have that kind of garage, sparse sound.
Hmm.
Do we want to talk in case people aren't familiar with? I don't know why they're listening to this, if but maybe they just want to discover music. If we want to inspire people to listen to Joy Division, should we
Mm.
talk a little bit about their history and what became of the band?
We can. Besides the thing I said at the very beginning, I know we have like a whole way we were going to do this, but I think just general excitement is going to make us deviate from that a lot. But but besides the introduction I gave, um, I read the book too by Peter Hook.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's called Unknown Pleasures. I read the book and he talks about how he experienced the band because he's the bassist. And Peter Hook also, by the way, invented New Order as well. New Order is a
Hmm.
result of the death of Ian Curtis because he wanted to
Hmm.
continue making music, but they wanted to change it to a more like art type sound,
Hmm.
art pop sound or whatever, which
Kind
I
of like
actually
a
love
prog
Norwood.
rock new
Yeah.
wave band. I mean, I always considered them more like a new wave band.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Hmm.
Because it's the use of synthesizers that differentiates it between post-punk. And like that's
Hmm.
why like today when you hear um like Twin Tribes or what's another one that a lot well Lebanon Hanover, but what's another one that a lot of people are usually familiar with?
I know as far as new wave, there's like Pet Shop
Oh
Boys,
yeah.
OMD. There was a huge explosion of new wave artists that in the post-punk era.
Yeah. Well, there's a modern equivalent called dark wave, and it usually involves like the same synthesizer heavy sound, but the lyrics are more macabre and morose, which
Mm,
is why they call it dark wave. So,
yeah. I mean, I would say as far as early new wave goth bands like the Jesus and Mary Chain
hmm
and Echo and the Bunnyman, bands
hmm
like that.
hmm all my favorites too. Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. So, if you're gonna get introduced to Joy Division, there's a few songs that you should probably listen to first, and obviously, Devil Tear Us Apart is the main one because it's their commercially successful one. But my earwig would be Dead Souls. Oh,
Hmm.
I'm so sorry, Laura.
Hmm,
I just said yours. I am so sorry. I did
it's
not mean
okay.
to do. I didn't even
That's good.
look. I'm
No,
so
no, no.
sorry.
Don't worry about it. We're going to talk about
uh,
that song a lot, I'm sure.
yeah. Well, what about? Do you know any of the history behind that song?
I know that he wrote it as he was going through his divorce with
Mm,
Deborah Curtis, his wife. And if for people who don't know the history of Joy Division, like one of the main things that has either, um, it's basically become the main thing about their music. In fact, I heard a interview with Morrissey, who I really love the music of, but
yeah.
sometimes he can be an a-hole.
Yeah. It's a weird relationship people have with Morrissey. I love the Smiths, but I think Morrissey should stop talking.
He says in an early interview he was in the Smiths at the time, and he says that he thinks that he's like, oh, I like the music of Joy Division, but I feel like the story of Ian Curtis is just the only thing people think about in that band. And it's a huge thing. It's just like Jim Morrison with the Doors
Yeah.
or Kurt Cobain with Nirvana. And Ian Curtis, unfortunately, took his life when he was 22 years
23.
old. Yeah, 22 or 23 years
Yeah.
old.
Which is
Um,
so sad because they were just getting ready to become like successful. And I always
mhm,
wonder like what would their music have sounded like if they continued on as a band, you know?
mhm. And it was for a multitude of reasons that I'm sure we'll discuss, but one of them was the disintegration of his marriage to Deborah Curtis, and because of a possible relationship that he was having with another woman, and just he had experienced a lot of um, depression in his life, and from what I've heard, he wrote that song during the darkest points of his divorce, or they never did get divorced, but the separation of him and his
Mhm.
wife.
Wasn't
And I also heard that it was a wasn't it? I don't know if this is rumor or true that the name Love Will Tear Us Apart was supposed to be a parody of the Captain and Tennille's song Love Will Keep Us Together.
I think so, yeah. I
Is that a
think
rumor? I don't know if it's true or not.
I'll have to look that up. But I think he was having an affair with a French journalist at the time.
Belgian.
Belgian. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was where that came from. And I think also I think he was having like epileptic seizures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he suffered from epilepsy.
Hmm
In fact, I think there was a show in like 1980 where the lighting manager accidentally turned on the strobe lights and it
Oh,
triggered an epileptic seizure on stage. And like, yeah, and because of his epilepsy and his illnesses, they say that the medications he was taking was already taking a person who was deeply depressive and making the situation even worse.
yeah. It was just a like powder cake and everything involved was just gonna make it go off.
And he was also married so young that I
Yeah.
just think that he got married and started a family long before he knew like everything he wanted in life.
I always think about musicians from the 70s and 80s and how a lot of them usually became like strong, heavy drug addicts, and they had like families, whole families. But I think it has something to do with the time period they were living in which that was the expected thing. You're supposed to be
Hmm.
married and have children, but they wanted to be rock and roll stars at the same time, which is a hard thing to
Yes.
reconcile.
Hmm.
So, um, oh, what was I going to say? So, but for my earwig, I would say Dead Souls should be the go-to
And
because
I love
that's
that song.
yes,
That I would say I love the Joy Division version, but I even love more the Nine Inch Nails version from the Crow
yes,
soundtrack.
yes. So it's like it's sort of set up to be like a goth anthem because you have it being covered by Nine Inch Nails, which transports you to another generation of, because I think they do still to this day. I'm not sure because I think Nine Inch Nails is put in the industrial new metal genre now.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
like, if you want to consider it like part of the subculture, I know there's people going to jump down my throat for saying this because a lot of people be like new metal, it's goth, and I'm like, I don't know about that. Um, I don't know about that. But Nine Inch Nails would be part of like a playlist if you were going to like a goth club. So
Oh, definitely.
yeah, so Dead Souls,
They always were at the clubs I went to.
yeah, same here. So, um, but there's so much history involved with the band. I don't think I wrote.
And my earwig, I must say, was Love Will Tear Us Apart, just because, like, I can just hear the first few chords of that song and turn it off, and it'll still be playing in my head. Dun, 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 dun,
Well,
do, 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 do,
yes.
do. And
There's
I'm singing it in my head the minute I hear those chords. And also, I think the first time I realized I'm getting too old is when I was walking through the grocery store and they were playing Love Will Tear Us Apart over the music speakers, whatever
oh
they're
man.
called.
You know who
I have
else?
to say I am not a technical music person, so I know Mark goes on to these podcasts and he's got all the technical like background information. I will have none of that. I just know what I love.
So, it's funny because another band that actually did a cover for Love Will Tear Us Apart was Fall Out Boy.
I think I've heard that once or twice.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting how like it kind of marries our generations by Fall Out Boy doing, and they influenced like the emo type. Well, there was like generations of emo, obviously, but there was like the first wave emo would have been like Fall Out Boy would be a musical influence, and so I think it's interesting that they did a cover of Joy Division too. But they also, I'm gonna jump a little bit. So one thing, so in the movie Donnie Darko, um, I love the scene where they're having the Halloween party and he gets ready to go out to do his stuff. And as he's leaving the house, the song starts to play um, on one of the radios inside, you know, the living room or whatever. And I always
Hmm.
associate that song with that and sort of like the inevitable tragedy that follows.
Hmm.
So even though that song starts off pretty like lighthearted and high energy. It just I always think of something tragic. But so I'm jumping to the sort of the instruments that they use in the band to make that
Okay.
beautiful like high string sound that you hear at the beginning of the song.
Hmm.
It was done by an ARP Omni 2, and it was the instrument they would use to make those lush string sounds, like in Love Will Tear Us Apart. And I'm gonna have a link from YouTube in the comments. But I went on YouTube to find a sample of that sound, and I did not realize this, but this was actually used across genres in the 80s to make that same sound in other bands. And I think like Flock of Seagulls used it,
Hmm.
and oh, what was another one? Not Flock of Seagulls, or not just Flock of Seagulls, but Public Image, I think, used it as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool. That's
yeah.
neat.
So if you ever wonder what makes that wonderful, beautiful sound, there's the ARP Omni 2, and then there's another little device called the tetranome or tetranome, I think, which makes that chorusy sound that you mostly
Hmm.
hear in like new wave, or not new wave, but new order. That chorusy, haunting oh sound. They use
Mm.
that as well in the band. So
Is
um,
that what causes like the vocal reverberations and such, or is that something else? I don't know.
that's done with a sequencer.
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of
All over my head.
I know. Well, okay, truth be told, when I was doing research for this episode, I kind of went down a rabbit hole. And I've always wanted to make my own music. I'm not a singer, but I would thought it would be cool to make like tracks and stuff. So if somebody wanted to sing over them, they could. And I kind of went down like a rabbit hole and started to learn like all the bits and pieces needed to make certain sounds because then I was like, ooh, I could buy all this stuff. It is not cheap though. This stuff is so expensive. I think
I
for the
imagine.
ARP, it's like $3,000.
Oh,
Yeah,
I ain't got that kind of dough for a hobby.
absolutely not. And then they have this one called it's like oh gosh, it's a starts with the B, but it's a something Juno 60 that makes like the Donna Summers "I Feel Love" sound at the very
Mm.
beginning.
Hmm.
That one is about $8,000.
Take out a loan.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have to be really committed to making music to do that. But anyways, so there are some lyrics we wanted to discuss about what people mishear when they're listening to some of the songs. Like, for example, in the song "She's Lost Control," people seem to miss the full lyric of, and she screamed out, kicking at her on her side, "I've lost control again." The full lyric is, and she screamed out, kicking on her side, and said, "I've lost control again."
Hmm.
But it's sort of like one of those whatchamacallit, the like when you swear something is a certain way, but it's not.
Hmm.
Uh,
I think that's the Mandela effect.
yes, it's very much a Mandela effect moment where you're like, I swear to God, this is the actual way it's sung.
I don't know. I don't really hear of other people mishearing the lyrics, but me personally is from Disorder when I'm going to try and sing this part where he says, "I've got the spirit, but lose the feeling." And I've always heard it as, "I've got the spirit, but who's it feeling?" Like, is he actually singing about a real spirit and trying to touch someone?
But it does sound like that, though. It does sound like
Yep.
that's what he's saying. So,
Uh,
how would you rank songs from the whole discography of the band? How would you rank them?
you gave me a tough bit of homework here. So I had to write down, like, I went through all, and it was nice because I actually haven't listened to Joy Division in a little while. I've been like listening to some other bands and um, just kind of like putting stuff on the back in the background. So I haven't like dove into them for a while. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to pick my, you know, what are my five favorites? And I started listening. I'm like, I love this one. I love this one. Like, just kept writing them down in my notes. Finally went through today and tried to pick a top five. So I don't know if you want to go back and forth from 5 to 1, or do you want me to do mine and then you'll do yours? What do you want to do?
Well, I only picked three, so you have a bit more than me. Why don't you do two, and then I'll do
Okay.
one, and then we'll go back and forth after that.
Groovy, groovy. Okay. I'll start with my number five, which I have lots of honorable mentions too, because I didn't know where to put them. But this one I really loved. And I hope that people will go to the links and listen to them because I've got my little earpiece here and I'm going to listen to it as I talk about it because it just helps to listen to the song and actually know what it is. But my number five is New Dawn Fades. It just has such a deep and somber bass intro, and the whole song just truly represents that signature Joy Division dark despair. Like, those lyrics just really seem to point to Curtis's like despair. I wrote down some of the lyrics. Like, he says, "The strain's too much. Can't take it anymore. It was me waiting for me, hoping for something more. I'm like, God, you can't listen to Joy Division if you're feeling really bad about yourself.
Mhm. I always
It takes you
categor
down some dark rabbit holes.
I always characterize the beginning of that song as like that feeling you get after you just finish crying, kind of. Like you're
Hmm.
kind of like
Yeah.
bereft and just sort of like in this low, low place, and it just the song comes in gentle and slow, and it's
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm. Yeah. Listening to it now and just
Mhm.
like every other goth kid or even any other, adolescent out there, this is what you listen to in like a dark bedroom when you're just feeling sorry for yourself.
Mhm.
And you're
Mhm.
just like, God, the world sucks. I'm just gonna lay here, listen to these really fucking depressing lyrics. And then I'll go to my number four just because I've got a few more than you. And that one is I felt like I needed to pay a little homage to more of their punk era. And
Mhm.
that one is Digital off of the album
Ah,
Substance.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just got that real simple, like 3 chord punk rock sound to it. But it's if you look at the lyrics, they're so dark. It's very signature dark Joy Division lyrics played to this punk beat.
Mhm. I actually have Digital as one of mine. So more information about Digital. It was released in 1978 as part of the double 7-inch EP entitled A Factory Sample. The song was recorded during the band's first session with producer Mark Hannett. Or I'm sorry, Martin Hannett. I apologize. It did not chart upon its release and didn't receive significant commercial success. However, it has since become a notable track in Joy Division's discography and is featured on several compilation albums, including Sill, Substance, and Heart and Soul. But like we said towards the beginning, Joy Division didn't get to the commercially successful part of their career as a band. They were about to. They were on the precipice, and then obviously the tragedy happened. So when
Mhm.
you listen to their music, it's all gonna sound like fresh out of the studio, very underground. Which honestly, I think that's perfect. It's like a still
Mhm.
life from the past. So, what is your
Yeah.
other one? What is your number three?
My number three is I just because I discovered Joy Division going to the goth clubs as a teenager. This one was there. They had so many great like just dance songs. I mean, you listen to the lyrics and they're very deep, but if you're just out there ready to shake it, like Shadow Play, Disorder, Isolation, all great ones. But this one was a banger on the dance floor at the goth club, and it was She's Lost Control.
Mhm. I actually have a memory of being very drunk and dancing with my best friend to that song. I think she wasn't drunk enough because she thought I looked very funny or something because she kept laughing at me. But when you are like at that level and you just hear music you love, it's such a golden moment.
And I love it because if anyone's ever gone to a goth, you know that us goth kids don't dance like no. It's like I think you can go out on TikTok or YouTube and find instructions on how to dance like a goth. And they've
Mhm.
got the like pull the cobwebs. And it's just it's so funny because when that song would come on, I think the girls would just go nuts because they'd be like, she's lost control.
Mhm. I've never actually seen anyone dance like that at any of these events. I swear to God, that is just a pure internet invention because I've never seen anyone dance like that.
Really?
Yeah, I've never
I'm gonna
seen
have to look up videos because I think they're pretty accurate, at least when I went.
it. So my number two would be Love Will Tear Us Apart. And we talked a little bit about this one already, but this was released in June 27th of 1980, and this was actually Joy Division's first hit and reached number 13 in the UK singles chart. It also topped UK's indie chart and peaked at number 42 on the Billboard disco chart in October 1980. It reached number one in New Zealand in June 1981. So um, it is their first and I think majorly only song that was commercially successful. at least at the time it came out. I mean, I'm sure most of their
Which
music
number
is.
is this for you, Billy? Because you froze for a minute there.
Oh, this is number two for me.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's Love Will
Level
Tear Us
tears
Apart.
apart. Yeah. What is your number two?
Okay. My number two
Mhm.
is Atmosphere off of Closer. That song is just so beautiful and it has a real like orchestral and poetic feel to it that is really the hallmark of mine and your
Mhm.
favorite band, The Cure. It has the chimes in it, and it just has like these really, I don't know, it has these really orchestral um feels to it that I just really love, and it's very quiet, and it's it still has that kind of
Mhm.
melancholy to it, but I feel like it is also
Mhm.
really beautiful, which is, I feel, also a huge hallmark of The Cure. Their stuff is beautiful and melancholy, and I just really love that becomes really apparent in this song. And I don't know if it was like contemporary with The Cure or if this maybe inspired them, but yeah, that's why I really love this
If
song,
I
Atmosphere.
remember correctly, The Cure came out in 84. So it's quite possible that it inspired them.
They started
May
before then. I think they
Hold
started
on.
in the
Let's do
late 70s, actually.
a quick Google search.
Go for it.
Let's see.
Google it. Google that shit.
Let's see. According to Google, oh my gosh, you're so right. Wow, I put my foot way into my mouth. They formed in 1976.
Hmm?
Yeah. Um,
And their stuff in the beginning too was a little more post-punk garage band sounding,
yeah,
and they didn't adopt that more rich orchestral style until later in their career. But
yeah.
yeah, it,
I
it
know that
I just
Robert
love
Smith.
that sound.
Oh yeah, me too. I know that Robert Smith vehemently denies being a goth band, but you can definitely see why he would say that because of he's got a lot of albums where it's mostly like dancey songs. There's
Yes.
only like maybe a handful of albums where it's truly macabre and
He
melancholic.
does have a lot of love and influence for like pop new wave stuff though,
Mhm.
because just recently he released his 30 top favorite songs of the 80s. And
Mhm.
I think number one was like Shoot That Poison Arrow by ABC or something like
Oh
that.
wow.
Yeah. But the
Yeah.
funny little divergent story is me and my best friend when we were in high school, and she was kind of like a hippie punk who liked to dabble in goth, and I was more like a goth who liked to dabble in some of her hippie stuff. Anyhow, but we both loved The Cure, but we told each other one night at some like bohemian coffee shop we were at that we were going to be closet Cure fans because so many of the goths we knew were such big Cure fans, and they all tried to look like either Susie Sue or Robert Smith, and we're like, we love The Cure, but we're not going to tell anyone. We're going
I
to be
love that.
closet Cure fans.
I love that. That is so funny.
And then finally, I just came out of the closet and I admitted it. I love The Cure. They're my favorite band of all time.
And that's so hilarious because nowadays it's like if you don't like The Cure and you claim to be goth, everyone just kind of looks at you like, what do you mean? That is so funny. Well, on the flip side of the single Atmosphere, the B side, which is my number one song, which
Mm-hmm.
is Dead Souls, which I talked about earlier. That song came out in 1980 and it was on the B side of the single Atmosphere. The song was recorded during a session in October 1979 and has since become one of the band's most acclaimed tracks. It did not chart when it came out as the band was still pretty underground at the time, but it has since been covered by various artists like Nine Inch Nails, which we discussed, and is used very famously on the Crow movie, which if you haven't seen that movie, put it on. It's amazing.
What are you even doing here? Go
I
watch
know.
the movie right
Exactly.
now. And then listen
Exactly.
to me and Mark's review of it. And then on me and Mark's review of The Crow 2024, which was, mediocre.
Which I have
But it
not watched.
did feature a Joy Division song. I think it was Disorder that was in
Oh,
it.
okay. So they tried to make a reference to it. See, I'm kind of I feel like as I'm getting older and becoming such a grandpa about things, like I'm not doing that. I've purposely refused to watch it just because of the aesthetics of the trailers and everything, and I was just like, I'm not watching this. But
Oh yeah.
it's good that they tried to make a reference to, the subculture in that movie.
Hmm.
But you said it was mediocre.
It was, I wouldn't say it was the worst ever because it
Mhm.
had Bill Skarsgård in it, and I love him anyhow. But
Oh yeah, me
it
too.
was definitely not it was not a worthy successor. Just go back and watch the original Crow.
Yeah, or you can read. They came out with a series of like companion books in the late '90s, which I've
Hmm.
started to collect. I
I don't think they
have
were done by Jim Obar though.
no. One of them was done by Poppy Z. Bright, which if any of you reader goths are out there, you know who Poppy Z. Bright is. She did. No, he did. I think he had transitioned by the time he wrote these. He did Dead Souls, which is a Joy Division reference, and it's about vampires in the South, but he writes vampires in a different way than most people
Hmm.
do. And I'll just leave it at that.
I'll admit I didn't read any of the books after the original Crow. I got the original Crow like comic books, the like
Mhm.
issues as they
Yeah.
came out back in the early 90s, but no, I hadn't read any of the books after. I didn't even know until like years later that there were other stories about it.
I have the Lazarus Heart, and then I have um, Hell, not Hellbent, it's Hellbound. Hellbound, yeah.
Mm.
Hellbound's actually really good. It's about a demon helping a marked man not die, and the demon's doing it so he can get redemption and go to heaven.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he's being marked by a drug pushing uh, demon summoner woman, and the demon she summons basically says that if you kill this man, heaven's gonna send their crow to take you out. And she's like, "Bring it on!" So it's basically that kind of story,
Uh-huh.
which I think is so interesting because most of the time when you read these books, it's usually a story about someone getting revenge on a spouse. Like Poppy Z. Bright's is about a gay man getting revenge on his dead lover who was murdered by like a psychopath who was like anti-trans and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting. Well, maybe I'll put him in my reading log and hopefully get around to that someday.
they are attainable and they're only like $15, so you can get them on Amazon.
Sorry, I'm being accosted by my cat right now. Oh my God, he really wants a hug. Okay.
Oh, he's so
Okay.
handsome.
So that was Dead Souls is your number one?
Yes. What is
All
your
right.
number one?
And my one number one, as basic as it's gonna be, is Love Will Tear Us Apart, which was your number three. I will listen to other songs that I like as much as I love them. I love, love, love this song. Every time like I said, I hear the first few chords of it and I'm just singing the rest of it in my head. I don't have as many details as you, but you had a lot anyhow. Like I think I wrote down that, this was supposed to be a parody of Love Will Keep Us Together by the Captain and Tennille. Also, I don't know if you said this, but Love Will Tear Us Apart is the epitaph on Ian Curtis's headstone
I did not.
in his grave in Cheshire, England. If you go to it, that is what the epitaph on his tombstone says.
Do you think the band chose that or his wife chose that?
I don't know. I'm not sure how it would, but it's kind of morbid,
Yeah.
as that is one of the contributing factors to his suicide.
You wrote this song when you were about to die, and let's put it on your gravestone.
Exactly. And I guess Billy and I talked about this earlier in the week, but there is a movie out there starring Sam Reed that's really good called Control, which is
Mhm.
a biopic about Ian Curtis, based off of the book written by his wife, Deborah Curtis, um, about their life together and his end and the end of the band.
Mhm. It's
And
really
I thought
cool.
it was really good.
Yeah, it was a really great movie. I think you can find it on YouTube actually.
Hmm.
Um, what's really cool about it is that when you see biopics of performers from either the late 70s, early 80s, the one continuous factor is everyone's love of David Bowie,
Hmm.
which I think is just so cool that this one man helped create a whole generation of musicians with his androgynous alien costuming and weird lyrics. Like I just love that so much. Like we should do a David Bowie episode, I think.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the next ones. We'll have to look for a good Bowie album.
Mhm. But yeah, it's a good movie. I highly recommend it. So
So that's our
we
top 10 or our top five. So
yes,
can I mention some of my
honorable mentions.
honorable
Yeah,
mentions? Yeah.
go
My
ahead.
honorable mentions, as I was trying to put this list together, is 24 Hours, which is a very depressing song, but excellent, really beautiful. Dead Souls, Isolation, No Love Lost, Disorder, Atrocity Exhibition, A Means to an End, and Shadow Play.
I love Atrocity. That's one of my other
Hmm.
favorite ones.
Yeah, that kicks off the album Closer. And when I first started listening when I put that album on and listened to those first drum beats, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good.
Oh man. So also really quick, Laura works for an alcohol distributor or spirits
Hmm.
distributor.
A spirits
So
distributor. Hmm.
yeah. So we actually made some cocktails for this episode, and I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to put the recipes in the yes, put it in
Oops.
the verbiage
Hmm.
for the episode so you guys can do it too. I'm drinking the Dark and Stormy, which is black spice rum. There's a specific black spice rum you're supposed to use, but I just got like a cheaper version. But black spiced rum and ginger beer, and then a
Hmm.
lemon or lime wedge for a garnish, or you can do candied ginger.
Yeah.
And then which
And
one did
that
you
came
do?
out of this book that my daughter and her husband gave me called Booze and Vinyl. And me and my husband have I wouldn't say huge, but a fairly sizable vinyl collection. His is more than mine, but this is a great little book that pairs vinyl records with cocktails. And they just happen to have Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures in this book. And the one of the cocktails suggested was the Dark and Stormy, like Billy had. And mine is called the Joy Division. Um, which we should say what that name came from because it's interesting. But it's called the Joy Division, and it is a London dry gin, dry vermouth, Cointreau, and absinthe with a lemon twist.
Did you actually put absinthe in it?
I did.
I love absinthe. If you haven't tried absinthe, I highly recommend it.
Some people
So
don't love it because it tastes like black licorice, and some people hate black licorice.
it's the wormwood. Just put some sugar in it, it'll be fine. The name Joy Division comes from the 1955 novel House of Dolls by Michel Deneur, and the book Joy Division refers to the prostitution wings of Nazi concentration camps during World War II. The band chose this name in early 1978 after discovering the original name Warsaw was already being used by another band. I just think it's funny how they decided to use an even more disturbing name.
I know. And I think they wanted to get rid of the name Warsaw because there was another band in Manchester that
Mhm,
had the name Warsaw in their name, so they didn't
mhm.
want to be confused with them.
And I believe the first album they have was hand drawn by Ian Curtis.
Hmm. And of course, it had like a Nazi youth on it. So
Yeah.
I think the band got labeled as white supremacists for a while. I
Yeah. I
wonder
don't know.
why.
Well, right. Well, I don't even know like what the attitudes were because like I know right like today any kind of Nazi symbology or like if you even own collector's items or whatever, you can get in really big trouble just having
Hmm.
it. But I like have since World War II happened only a couple decades earlier, I wonder what the attitudes were like at the
I
time.
think it was kind of, and could be saying complete bull crap. So I'm
Yeah.
sorry, folks, but I did see a post one time because Susie Sue back in the early punk days was wearing a jacket with a swastika badge on the side of it, and it had something to do with like the punk scene and everything, and just like being anti-government and everything. So I think that
Right.
was just a some symbology of the time that they were using, that was just showing their anti-government post, punk rock status.
Yeah, and I'm not super familiar with this subculture, but there's like the London skinhead movement, which from what I hear is not supposed to be white supremacist, but some people say it is. So I'm not really sure, but apparently it was like cool to use Nazi symbology back then. So that's why I was like, I don't know what the attitudes for that was like at the time.
I wasn't there, so uh, it could be. I think it was maybe just them trying to be very anti-establishment and cutting edge at the time.
Mhm. Possibly, possibly. So, there are some more unique instruments that the band used to make their sounds. And it's actually my favorite thing about this one is I'm not Mark, but Bernard Sumner actually he built a synthesizer that makes the unique vibrato effect, the Transcendent 200. There was another genre of music where something like that happened. So the genre acid
Hmm.
was made from a broken synthesizer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was and what kind of synthesizer it was, but they found a beat up synthesizer at I think like a charity shop, and they started playing with it, and it made that acid unique sound. And I think it's cool when bands create genres based off of broken
Hmm.
equipment, you know.
Yeah. And I saw this tidbit when I was putting the notes together, and then was surprised that they actually put it into the movie Closer that we were discussing. Um, that the music producer, was it Mark Hartnett? I wrote it down in
Martin.
my Martin Hartnett.
Martin.
Yeah, he
Mhm.
suggested that they use an aerosol spray can, which is what they use in to make that sound in
Mhm.
She's Lost Control.
Mhm. Because back then people had to literally invent sounds as they went along. Didn't have these fancy gadgets that let them sample stuff all the time.
Nope.
So, and then we also have the melodica, which was used to make the haunting ethereal effects in the song "Decades." And no post-punk band would be complete without drum machines because
Hmm.
obviously
The
you have to
sound of
have
the
it.
80s.
Exactly, which I love so much. Actually,
I loved them too.
that's why I listen to darkwave music, because all like well not I wouldn't say all, but majority of them use drum machines, which you know. But so we have talked at length about the band in general. Um, we have a portion for more general discussion. Is there anything else you can think of
Um,
that you wanted to say about this band?
just I'm actually kind of glad when Ian Curtis died that the band made the decision to stay together, but also to change the name and go in a new direction,
Hmm.
because I think there are bands similar to like Led Zeppelin when their drummer died. They just don't want to continue on without that influence in their band. And, New Order has a totally different sound, but I think you can tell their roots in Joy Division.
Hmm.
I heard if you listen to this guy on YouTube, he's called the Professor of Rock. He did I think, an interview with Peter Hook, and there's a particular New Order song that I should have written down and didn't, but it um, very much sounds like I believe, in fact, it was a song that was originally created for Joy Division, but they never recorded, and then they ended up doing as New Order. So they definitely have their roots in Joy Division, but I like that they
Yes.
expanded as New Order, and New Order is still around today. So in a way, you can say Joy Division is still around today.
Yes, actually, I know what song you're talking about. The song is Ceremony.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can tell because and A Lonely Place was also a song meant for Joy Division, which A Lonely Place is one of my favorite New Order songs. Now that's the song you listen to when you just finished crying.
Okay, I'm gonna write it down. Listen
Yeah.
to it later.
And if anyone who loves American Horror Story knows, In a Lonely Place is one of the tracks from Hotel, season Hotel. So there's a really beautiful part where Lady Gaga is walking through like this. It's in LA somewhere. I've never been. I don't even know what it's called. I'm assuming it's like an installation piece or something. But it's like this square of like concrete with all these like lampposts in it. And she's like walking through the lampposts and the
Hmm.
song's playing while she's doing that. It's supposed to be very like dramatic and what and avant-garde, but yeah. But you could definitely hear the sounds of Joy Division in the song Ceremony. In fact, I think it was like that was their transcendent song, how they started to transfer over into a newer sound
Uh-huh.
after Ceremony. So,
Excellent.
but
That is
yes.
all I've got, unless you guys want to hear more goth talk with me and Billie.
Would that be funny if that's a thing we started to just do? So for the links that I'm gonna have put in tandem with the episode, I'm going to put in we will do Dead Souls, Level Tear Us Apart, and then did you want to do New Dawn Fades?
Yes, that song
Okay.
is
So we'll do
beautiful.
that. And then I will find those links to the YouTube videos that show the sounds of the APR Omni 2. I will see if I can find the Transcendent and then the I can't even say this word. Melodica. Melodica.
Melodica.
Yeah. And then the Tretronome, I will see if I can find that one as well. But those links will be provided in the comments and stuff of the video so you guys can follow along. Because unfortunately, we have to follow rules because people like to get paid for their music. So,
And maybe we'll throw in a link there to I rented Control through Amazon Prime, but I think it's available free somewhere.
yeah, I think I saw it on
So
YouTube.
yeah,
So,
yeah, great movie. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's only like an hour and a half long, maybe, if even that.
Yeah, I think I liked it the most because Sam Reed, no, not Sam Reed. Wait, who's the actor who plays in the? Did I say Sam Reed earlier? No, that's our
You
beautiful
did, and
vampire.
I was thinking, Lestat. Lestat, are you in this movie?
No, he wasn't. It's not him. I've got to IMDb it real quick because I've only ever seen this other Sam Riley, who was
Sam
also in
Riley,
Pride
yeah.
and Prejudice and Zombies, which is the only other movie I've seen him in. He plays a great Ian Curtis, and if you go back and see some of Ian Curtis's live performances, I think because of his epileptic seizures that added
Mhm.
to his onstage um, persona and performances, he had these very jerky kind of ways of
Yes,
dancing, and I thought he represented that really really well.
yes. The film was directed by Anton Corbin, and it was based on the biography "Touching from a Distance" by Deborah Curtis. So, also the actress who plays Deborah Curtis in the movie, Samantha Morton, and she plays, I believe she plays Jane Eyre in one of the Jane Eyre adaptations. So,
Also, Alpha on The Walking Dead,
yeah.
one of the best villains in my opinion on The Walking Dead.
So, and I think this was like it was in 2007 when this came out, and I think most of these actors were like pre-fame
Mm-hmm.
actors. So it's like their early work. So it's actually kind of art house type film.
Yeah, and it's all shot in black and white, so I really enjoyed
Yes.
that too.
Yes. Anyway, without further ado, we do not have any feedback as of right now, but if you want to make some feedback, you definitely can. You can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/piratecore entertainment. There you will find images of the topics that we cover and leave a comment within that thread so that we may read your comments on the episode, on other episodes when we record. You can also email us at piratecoreentertainment@gmail.com. You can send a regular email there, or you can just record your thoughts as a recording, and we will pop that in the podcast as we record to include you uh, in on the conversation. Plus, try to answer any questions you have. If you subscribe to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you should. You should follow us. We're really good. I have some of my podcasts on there, which I need to do more episodes for. Laura, she doesn't really do her own, but she likes to pop in on the other people of
Yeah.
Pirate Core and Journal and Cinema podcasts. So you can hear
When
on
interview comes
various.
back, I will be there.
Oh yeah, so will I. I'm so excited. Oh my god.
Maybe one of these days we'll actually finish Mayfair Witches.
Maybe. I tried to, and when you guys were talking about having another episode, I was like, yeah, let's do that. I tried to so bad. I was like, when will this get good?
We should be kind. There are some people out there who like it, but they probably
Well,
don't listen to this show.
yeah. But they are also making a Talamasca series, which I'm kind of interested in.
That might be
So,
interesting.
yeah.
I'll give it a
'cause
try.
that will be a truly original work. So I think my prejudices and everything will kind of go out the window because it's a completely original work. So I
Mhm.
can just admire it for what it is, an Anne Rice uh, influenced.
Inspired, yes.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, you can leave a review on either of those in either of those places, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps us get noticed. You can also tell a friend, since word of mouth is always best, and you can tell them where we can be heard, such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or whatever podcast player of choice is out there. We can be found on, like Deezer, for example. And then, like I said, you can find some of my episodes on a Cinema podcast with Laura and Mark and everybody else, Becky. And then I have some of the Slay Lounge on Pirate Core Entertainment. But forgive me, I have not touched it in a while, and I'm very sorry about that.
You got things to do.
Yeah, school, working out, writing, trying to keep my sanity, like all the things. And as always, we would love for everyone to go to the Pirate Core Entertainment website when available and check out the other podcasts and entertainment in Pirate Core and the Pirate Core family. Just go to piratecoreentertainment.com. Thank you to everyone out there listening to the podcast. This was the Pirate Core Music Podcast. I'm Billy with an IE.
I'm Lara, and thanks for listening to us art nerds this week.
We will catch you on the flip side of the next music track.
Bye-bye.